All right, so that was a little bit of fun. Take a quick look back now. I wanted to talk about a story we told you about just last week, and that was the FBI, or I think it was just last week. It might have been 2 weeks ago, but the FBI not wanting to turn over the Seth Rich laptop. And they were in court. We told you they're going to be moving for reconsideration of that judge's order who basically said, look, some of your stuff is valid, but with respect to the Seth Rich laptop, the exceptions to the FOIA law that you've cited are not valid. They don't apply there, and you've got to produce the laptop. And then the FBI asked for some more time. The government did, Department of Justice, FBI, more time to respond. So, the lawyer on the case, Ty Clevenger, saying, look, they're going to file a motion for reconsideration. Well, they've now done that. And interestingly, in their motion for reconsideration, they say that not only did they not open up an investigation into the Seth Rich murder, and I guess you could maybe see that because murder really isn't per se a federal crime. So not only did they not open an investigation into that, but they never even extracted the data, so they claim, from his laptop. So literally, according to the FBI, nobody's ever even looked at this stuff. And they say that they're currently trying to get it into a situation where it can actually be reviewed, which, come on, how incompetent can they be? They're still trying to get it off of the compact disc so that they can review it. Basically what happens is somebody took a mirror image of the laptop hard drive and put that on a computer disk, and it wouldn't be that hard to move that off the disk and start extracting the files. But they're still trying to figure that out over at the FBI, and now they say to the judge, if you don't grant our motion for reconsideration and you still order us to produce this stuff, we want to produce it at a rate of 500 pages a month. Well, that sounds reasonable. 500 pages a month, gosh, that's more than 10 pages a day, right? That's a lot of production, except for the fact that it will take about 67 years for them to produce all the documents on the computer at 500 pages a month. And which ones do you think you're getting for the first several years? You think you're getting the important stuff, or is that going to come at year 65, 66, and 67? And what I love what Ty Clevenger had to say about this. Again, the attorney who's trying to pursue this has been pursuing this for 5 years. And he said, after he's been dealing with the FBI this long, he said, quote, I now assume that the FBI is lying to me unless and until it proves otherwise. The FBI is desperately trying to hide records about Seth Rich, and that begs the question of why. Why are they trying to keep these records from the public? They're fighting so hard for it, and, again, he's exactly right. It begs the question, why? Why do they care? If this was just a murder, robbery, murder, as they wanted to call it, on the streets, on the mean streets of D.C. at 4:30 in the morning, somebody just shot him and didn't take anything, but we'll call that a robbery. Didn't take anything that we know about. Maybe they took a thumb drive that he was carrying, around his neck or whatever that had more files on it or the original files. Who knows? Who knows? The point is there's something there with that murder, and the FBI hasn't looked into it. And given the things that they have looked into that we've heard about recently, they sure are interested in things like people protesting outside of abortion clinics. People, and these people aren't even protesting heavily. They're out there praying and singing and trying to tell people, hey, there's an alternative to going in and getting an abortion. Those kind of people, and we heard that story out of Pennsylvania, Mark Houck up in Pennsylvania, those kind of people are getting raided. They're having 20, 30 FBI agents show up at their door, guns drawn, with the AR-15s out, like they're taking down some kind of criminal mastermind. They didn't even do this to the mafia guys. They didn't show up with this much firepower. And that's a real issue at the FBI. There's whistleblowers coming out at the FBI who are saying, look, this focus, this push at the FBI is a political push to focus on domestic terrorism, to try and focus on people. They're calling them the ultra MAGAs, right? Because they're targeting one political party or one side of the political spectrum, and they're using the law enforcement operations of government to do that. And that's being done day in and day out. It's been done very successfully since the Obama years. That's when they made the switch. 9/11 and the Patriot Act, that turned all of the surveillance that was focused internationally looking for terrorists, that turned that on in the U.S. And Bill Binney taught us about that. He was the one that invented that system. Probably the highest, most decorated NSA agent or person who worked for the NSA that's ever lived. He was a mathematical coder. He built the actual systems that analyzed all that global data looking for terrorists. And when they turned those on in the U.S., he resigned in protest. Now, you never heard about him. It never really made the news. You might have heard about him now, but you certainly never heard about him at the time. But as we say on the show, I mean, he was Edward Snowden before Edward Snowden. But Snowden came out and blew the whistle on what they were doing as well. And what they've done is they've weaponized federal law enforcement for political purposes. And it's a real shame. It's a real shame to see this happening. And that's why people's trust in the FBI, people's trust in the Department of Justice is at an all-time low. People want to see fairness out there in our systems. They want to see even-handedness in the systems of governance of our country, and they're just not seeing it.
Thank you for listening to the Morgan Streetman Show. We hope you enjoyed what you heard, and if you did, please click like and subscribe to help us out. And remember that we recommend that you exercise your brain at least once a week.